Rashee Rice punishment was handed down by a Dallas judge.
I mean, it was like something that you couldn't even imagine out of like a horror film.
We got a good steal, I believe, on Jalen Royals there out of Utah State.
I agree with you 100% on Royals. We can't just sit here and say, we've got Patrick Mahomes. We trust in him. You know, once they get these receivers back, we're going to go right back to like what we were in 2022, 2023. Like this team struggled a little bit passing the ball in 2023, and they struggled a lot passing the ball in 2024. And there's got to be more improvements made.
You're listening to All Chiefed Up, the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in Warren Sharp, baby, to the program. Appreciate you being here, brother. Let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I just finished writing my 2025 football preview book. I do this annually. This year was the longest edition that I've ever done, though, 586 pages. About 1/32 of that is on the Kansas City Chiefs, covering what I expect out of this team in 2025, what we saw from them in 2024. The interesting thing, obviously, about the Kansas City Chiefs is they're always in the Super Bowl. So the sample size for the Chiefs in terms of statistics, analytics, data to pour through is always a bit larger than most teams. You know, I've got the printed copy here. You can get this on Amazon. This is what 586 pages looks like. But if you want to get it for just $1 for the PDF, it's normally $29 up on my website, but there's a code CHIEFS. If you go to sharp.football, enter the code CHIEFS for your show, it'll drop the price just to $1 to preview the upcoming season. And you can use it for fantasy, betting, just general knowledge about football. It's a lot of fun to read through, and hope you guys can check it out.
That's awesome, man. I've checked out a little bit of it. I was reading through a lot of interesting stuff in there, a lot of charts, a lot of metrics. It's a great piece of work, man. I don't know how you do it. That thing's as thick as the Bible. So, yeah, man, let's jump in, dude. We got a little bit of crazy news right before we jumped on here. Rashee Rice punishment was handed down by a Dallas judge. They said he's going to get 5 years probation, 30 days served in jail, but he can do that anytime over the 5 years probation. How do you think that the NFL is going to punish him now going forward? And then how do you think the Chiefs are going to fill that void? Do you think they'll bring in a new veteran? Do you think they'll stick with just Juju, or maybe they go with the rookie Jalen Royals?
Man, that's an interesting question, because I honestly don't have any idea what that punishment is going to be. I guess it all depends upon, right, like what he pled to in the decision. Like what did he agree that he is guilty of committing? And so until we know that, we don't know. I guess there's like thresholds as to like what the minimum is for certain types of offenses, and it might be 6 games is the minimum. I'm not quite sure. It remains to be seen. I mean, he was lost last year in week 4 and missed the rest of the season. So he could miss 4 games, 6 games to start the season. I don't even know when they would actually give him the punishment. So there's still a lot of questions there remaining to be answered. But, you know, they do still have weapons, and we knew that they were going to be without Rashee Rice for some of the season, most likely, with a suspension. It just was a matter of how long, when that would actually get announced, and that sort of thing. But if anybody's built to overcome it, right, the Chiefs did go 15-2 last year. The Chiefs did overcome. I mean, they didn't have Rashee Rice, Marquise Brown, or Xavier Worthy in any singular game together at all.
Right.
Because they missed, Brown missed the first 14 games due to shoulder injury. Rashee Rice was lost after week 4 due to his knee injury. So this team already overcame a lot, but the problem, as I'm sure we're going to get to discussing, is just that they had so many things that went right for them in terms of winning those one-score games, in terms of being excellent on third downs, and those things aren't necessarily repeatable. So you cannot enter the 2025 season saying, well, we were able to survive it last year, and so it's going to be fine this year for us. They need to make some changes this year in their philosophy, in their execution, and hopefully in their personnel, so they can achieve a easier road to success, because last year was very difficult for a team that is as good as you guys are. You shouldn't need to play in that many one-score games, go 11-0 in one-score games. You shouldn't need to win that many of those close games.
Right. So you said in your book, you talked a little bit about how they performed last year and also what you're projecting for this season. You just mentioned that they had a lot to overcome last season, a lot of injuries and everything like that. It seemed like they were kind of switching up the program over and over again, but they still managed to go 15-2, got all the way to the Super Bowl. Why do you think they performed so epically bad in the Super Bowl? And how do you see that affecting them going forward into this season?
So, you know, I spent a lot of time researching Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid going up against Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio, obviously, from his time with the Denver Broncos, there was a lot of history there. And Vic Fangio knew how to limit Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's offense. And for a while there, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, you guys were one of the most explosive, high-scoring offenses in the NFL. Bigger plays down the field, quick attack. And Vic Fangio was able to minimize that, force you to drive the football. He played a lot of cover six, used some different types of coverages that Patrick Mahomes performed really poorly against, really excellent on third downs. And as a result, like one of the things I expected to have happen in the Super Bowl was I thought you were going to drive the ball, but settle for a lot of Harrison Butker field goals. Like I did see you guys having trouble getting into the end zone, but I thought you would at least get there. And I don't know how many minutes lapsed throughout the game before you even crossed midfield. I mean, it was like something that you couldn't even imagine out of like a horror film. Like what is happening to this offense that can't even cross midfield? But that's why in the book, in the chapter that I wrote about the Kansas City Chiefs, it was just such a unique game versus a coordinator like Vic with an excellent and very talented defense that, yes, you guys will play them in week 2 in your home opener this season. But I don't think that particular game weighs very heavily into what other defenses are going to be able to do to you this year, nor what your offense is going to look like this year. I think that's just a bad matchup, and we'll see what the rematch looks like in week 2 this season. But I don't think it's going to factor into your week 1 game on the road against the Chargers. I don't think it's going to factor into your week 3 game against the New York Giants or any other game thereafter. That was just a unique one-off. And so for that reason, I did not spend that much time trying to explain it and think about how it's going to factor into the season, because I just don't think that it really will.
Right. It was kind of an outlier, right? Because the Chiefs don't get blown out ever. And they just did on the national stage. So
we kind of had a theory about that. We thought Andy Reid kind of played right into what Philly wanted to do. They wanted to control the clock a little bit. They wanted to feature Saquon Barkley and then take their shots when they had them. And the Chiefs kind of came out and did exactly what we thought they shouldn't do because they were struggling with offensive line concerns. And they said they wanted to drop back and throw the ball and hold on to the ball. And they didn't even have their second or third run attempt to almost 7 minutes left in the first half. It seemed really weird. And like you said, we were really good at getting to the red zone all season long, but we just couldn't put the ball in the end zone once we got there. So I thought that was a theory that we come up with, that Andy Reid just had an epically bad game plan and it just all kind of fell apart. So what do you think about that? Do you think it was maybe the Chiefs should have relied a little bit more on that run game and maybe that offensive line done something a little different? Or do you think they did everything they could have done?
No, I don't think I agree with you. I don't think they did everything that they could have done. I think if Andy Reid had it back, he would have done things differently to raise the ceiling of what that offense could be. I still don't think they're winning that game the way Philly played, right? Like the Chiefs could play better, but the way that Vic was calling his defense, I still don't think that the Chiefs are winning that game, which obviously stings. And I'm not saying that the Eagles are definitely the best team, but you would have had to get in a rematch on the same day. You would have had to get the Chiefs playing a different game plan and the Eagles playing worse than what they did. I thought the Eagles did a great job, and it was just really difficult. Steve Spagnuolo is one of the best single game defensive coordinators in the NFL, like in modern history, in my opinion. Like you take a one-off playoff game scenario and ask him to create a game plan to help slow an opposing offense down, and give him a little bit of time to figure something out. He's excellent at doing it. And I think he's a big, huge catalyst as to why you guys did win the last 2 Super Bowls prior to 2024. So like even on that side of the ball, there were some things that were difficult for the Chiefs defense. I just think overall, big picture, is just a horrible matchup against a team in the Philadelphia Eagles that was very healthy, very strong, playing their best football. And the Chiefs were calling a poor game. We're playing poor football. We're the more injured team. And yes, it would have been interesting, awesome, cool, I think, for you guys to be the first team to win 3 straight Super Bowls.
Right.
But now that's the question. Now it's like, what do we do from here, right? We're trying to get back and win another Super Bowl. And Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's quest for greatness is unmatched. Their motivation is unmatched, but it's a very different type of motivation entering this upcoming season, I think, than it was last year, whereas there was a little bit more pressure, but also like this singular focus last season. This year, I think there can't be nearly as the same amount of pressure. There's still going to be focus, but hopefully you can open things up a little bit more and get a little bit more creative and not play things as tight to the vest because I think that's the only way that this offense is going to reach the levels that it was reaching back in 2022 and 2021, et cetera.
Right. So I think that a lot of the scapegoat for the Super Bowl performance and even other bad performances from the Chiefs in the last few years has obviously been on that offensive line, specifically left tackle, but kind of the offensive line as a whole. We just saw them sign Trey Smith to a massive deal, 4 years, $94 million or something like that. How do you like that signing by the Chiefs? Do you like the extension for Trey Smith? And do you think it has any other ramifications in the future for contracts of George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie? How do you think they juggle all that?
Well, it's a challenge. Anytime that you've got, I think in hindsight, the Patrick Mahomes deal looks great right now. Eventually, they'll be able to do something with that. And, the goal is to obviously get the best quarterback play that you can for your buck, right? So the better quarterbacks are going to require more of a cap hit. And then you figure out when you need to re-sign them so that you can push more of the cap into the future and what you can do with the extra money that you then create to pay other players around a great quarterback. And this is something that, like a Jaden Daniels with the Washington Commanders, they don't have to worry about. He's on a cost-controlled rookie deal. He's in year 2. They can go out and bring in a new left tackle and Laramie Tunsil and draft another offensive lineman. That's what you guys did too, though. You guys go out and, as you mentioned, you sign Trey Smith, you bring in Josh Simmons. I think the goal for you guys is obviously to balance strength with like that top heaviness of your roster and continue to draft well at the bottom. This is something that a team like the San Francisco 49ers has not done a good job of, in my opinion. They are obviously one of your biggest competitors in the NFL. They're in the NFC conference, but that's a team that I think is very top heavy with several stars that are paid a lot of money, and they've done a poor job of drafting. And as a result, they're a very fragile roster. One or two guys, key guys get injured who are up in that top paid level. And suddenly there's not the depth and the quality of other players who could step in, fill those voids. And we see a season like we did last year where they absolutely crumbled. I think for you guys, we just mentioned, you are a pass first offense and your top 2 receivers were out for most of the year, Marquise Brown and Rashee Rice. And you guys still went 15-2 as a pass first offense. So I think your ability to overcome those things with the quality of your overall roster is something that most teams wouldn't be able to say. And yes, Patrick Mahomes is the most expensive player for good reason, but he also could play better. I don't know your guys' opinion because of what he was working without last year, but my opinion is if they're going to win a Super Bowl in 2025, we can't just sit here and say, we've got Patrick Mahomes, we trusted him. Once they get these receivers back, we're going to go right back to like what we were in 2022, 2023. Like this team struggled a little bit passing the ball in 2023, and they struggled a lot passing the ball in 2024. And there's got to be more improvements made so that you guys can get to that 2025 Super Bowl and win it potentially.
Right. You just mentioned, some draft picks and how we have to get back. We got a good steal, I believe, on Jalen Royals there out of Utah State. I thought if it wouldn't have been for that injury he suffered last year, maybe he should have went a lot earlier. We had him projected as maybe a upper to mid second round pick possibly. We also got Brashard Smith in the 7th round. We said he was probably worth a 5th round pick. And you actually, I read some of your book. I seen a chart. You said the Chiefs had the 6th highest draft value of all draft classes in 2025. I think you said Josh Simmons. We got a pretty good deal there. And I think Omar Norman-Lott, Ashton Gillotte, our 2nd, our 3rd round picks, you guys projected a little lower, maybe Noel Williams as well. Looking back at all those draft picks, which one of those guys do you think is going to have the most instant benefits for the Chiefs this season?
Yeah, that's the hard part. What is Andy Reid willing to give for a young wide receiver to help start early on? It's vital in training camp here, which we're about to see, for a young player like Royals to get that chemistry down, to understand his role. Because if you want him helping out, and 3 of their first 4 games are tough games. You play your Chargers, who are your biggest rival in the AFC West, although I do believe the Broncos are heading up there in terms of their quality.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Eagles and the Ravens are 3 that's 3 of your first 4 games. You need that chemistry in there, especially if you're going to be playing without Rashee Rice for some of that period, which is to be determined. So you're right. We did evaluate. We use a metric called draft capital over expectation. We look at where the players might have been drafted versus where you guys actually took them. And you had a number of steals. You had a number of players, as you kind of indicated by your own metrics, where you were able to draft them later than what they were sort of projected to go. And I agree with you 100% on Royals being a strong and exciting player to offer a little bit of a different dynamic, something that you guys have been searching for, cycling through receiver after receiver, trying to figure out, can somebody fit in here? That is so difficult. I can't imagine for a guy like Andy Reid or a guy like Patrick Mahomes. I view receivers as investments, right? Like you are investing reps at practice, reps in camp, reps during the week, and then reps in games, trying to get this guy to fill the void and be what you need him to be. And when you try to get one guy to do it and then he doesn't, and then you have to switch, and next month you're going after a different guy, and then you switch in next month after a different guy. It's just, think about all that time that you've invested in and spent on those players to try to build them up, to get them ready to be the position that you need them to fill. And then they just don't do it. So you have to pivot. That is got to be psychologically a very frustrating outcome for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes over the last couple of seasons. Hopefully you've got a core, and hopefully you've got a couple of young players here who can fill those roles and just be consistent. They don't have to deliver top flight production every single week, and they will make mistakes. But what you don't want to have happen is a guy who comes in and then you realize this isn't the guy, and you have to pivot off of him like completely and move and start working some other person in there. So that's where I'm optimistic that Jalen Royals, 4th round draft pick for you guys, can be the guy that ends up fitting in and filling that role and playing really well and giving you guys that high floor and then some ceiling games at times. But he's consistently doing what you need him to do, and he can build around that as opposed to trying to replace that.
Right. So another guy that Chiefs Kingdom is super excited about was our 7th round pick, Rashee Smith. Obviously, he's an ex-wide receiver converted to running back. He was an all-ACC wide receiver with the Miami Hurricanes. So the Chiefs, they were kind of known for a quick passing attack, and they used Jerick McKinnon a lot a couple of years ago for short passes out of the backfield and things like that. I think a lot of people in Chiefs Kingdom are excited to see the Chiefs get back to that sort of an offense as something that's kind of been missing in the last year or two, a running back that can receive out of the backfield. Do you think that's going to have as much bearing as the fans think it might have? And do you think that Rashee Smith could see significant playing time in his rookie season?
Well, it's going to come down to, if he's going to work out of the backfield, the pass protection. Can he be there and fill that role? Because if you lose Patrick Mahomes, that's the season, that's the franchise, right? So you've got to ensure that he is at least got a minimum level of competency in pass blocking or what you need him to do. Once you can establish that occurs, then it's all upside from there, in my opinion. I mean, the Chiefs were one of the teams that was throwing the ball extremely short. They ranked 32 out of 32 teams in passes thrown 15 plus yards downfield last year. They ranked number 1 in the highest rate of passes thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage. And I think I have another interesting metric about that. They ranked not just last year as the highest rate team of throwing passes at or behind the line of scrimmage. There have been 192 team seasons. So like 2020 Chiefs is one team season. 2021 Chiefs is another team season. There's been 192 different team seasons since 2019. Okay,
Gotcha.
so the last 6 years. The Chiefs have the second highest rate of passes thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage of any of those 192 teams in the last 6 years. And they were throwing 31% of their passes at or behind the line of scrimmage. They don't want to have to do that in the future, but what it shows is that a receiver out of the backfield could absolutely be there to fill that role, because there are targets that are being thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage at a ridiculous rate in this offense. That was the case last year. So now if you can get somebody who's actually going to be able to catch those and make a productive, explosive play with those. And Andy Reid has long been one of the best in the NFL at designing plays that do involve screen passes or passes thrown to running backs behind the line of scrimmage that gain explosives. And Kyle Shanahan's really good at that, and Andy Reid's really good at that. the thing that I marvel the most about Andy Reid is just zooming out a little bit for a second. You have the best quarterback in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes. You could ask the best quarterback in the NFL to do the most difficult things game after game, play after play within those games, and he would have a really high ceiling and execute at a really high level. But then he'd also, by being asked to do so many difficult things, get really worn down by the end of the season, probably take too many hits, probably get injured, those types of things. Instead, what Andy Reid does is he has the best quarterback in the NFL, but he prides himself on making life easy for Patrick Mahomes. Make it as easy as possible. We still want to win games, but we don't need to be spectacular. We don't need to throw the ball deep down the field. I don't need you to hold the ball for 5 seconds scrambling around. I don't need to call my optimal plays every single time to put up ridiculous point totals. You guys led entering the fourth quarter by double digits, just 3 games last year. 3 games. That was one of the lowest of any team in the NFL. It was your lowest of any season in the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid era. Back in the heyday, right? Not 2023, because there you led only in 4 games by double digits entering the fourth quarter. Prior to that, it was literally half the games that you played. 8 to 9 games every single season, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. You were up by 10 plus points entering the fourth quarter. That wasn't happening. So we do need the ceiling to be raised in terms of your ability to get leads, grow leads, and make life a little bit easier on your quarterback and everybody else in the fourth quarter of games. But at the same time, I love what Andy Reid does with Patrick Mahomes. And if they now have a player out of the backfield who could turn those 31% of passes being thrown out or behind the line of scrimmage into explosive gains like they haven't had, it's going to go a long way for you guys this season.
Yeah, 100%. I think they got to get back to being a little bit more explosive. A lot of people are saying maybe it's the defenses reacting to this. They went to that cover 2 shell. Patrick Mahomes had to adapt to that. We've also just been reshuffling offensive line like crazy. You were talking about how you don't like when rookies have to come in and then you have to pivot really quickly. Well, we went with, Kingsley Sumatai last year and pivoted after a game and a half, and then we just rotated it. And it was pretty amazing how the Chiefs adapted the style of football they did. And I know a lot of people all year long, this is all we ever hear. People do not like continued success. It's just the way it is. They get tired of it. They get fatigued. They say it was calls and this and that and everything else. Are you one of those guys that buy into the Chiefs get all the calls? Or do you think that's a little bit overblown?
Well, I think there is a narrative there that started at some point and has gotten overblown since that point in time. Every single good team historically, you got the best players out there. They need to keep those players safe. And I look no further than what we see in the WNBA right now, where you've got some of those star players complaining about all the calls, and then now they're getting injured and then they're missing time. And that's what the NFL years ago tried to do. It was back in the 2010 NFL season where quarterbacks were just getting destroyed in the pocket after they threw passes or when they were dropping back there, of guys flying in low, hitting them low, like the James Harrison hits, guys getting destroyed over the middle of the field. The NFL came in and said, we're going to change some of the rules to protect our quarterbacks in the pocket. And that ushered in this era of more passes being able to be thrown. And coaches like Andy Reid capitalized on that by calling higher rates of passes as a result, because those plays became more efficient because you couldn't hit the quarterbacks like you had been doing. So I think anytime that you're on an offense with a good player that passes the football a lot, you're probably going to be in a position to get more of the calls against the other team because they are trying to protect quarterbacks like they do. I don't believe your success in any way to a major degree is because you're getting all of the calls. I think that you guys have one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in NFL history, partnered with a perfect coach for his style and one of the greatest offensive minds that the NFL has seen. And you guys pass the ball a ton. And so we tend to see receivers get tugged or dragged or held on pass plays. We tend to see fewer offensive holding calls in general on pass plays. More offensive holding calls inevitably happen on run plays. Right. And so when you have an offense that drops the quarterback back, passes a lot, you're going to have more calls on the defense than other teams do just because of your pass rate. So I don't think that is a precursor to your success in terms of like getting calls and and that sort of thing.
Man, we've had a great talk with you today. You got infinite knowledge. You're like a wizard out here with football knowledge. It's insane. I feel like your head should be like this big. It's crazy. But we're going to have a little bit of fun with you for a few minutes. I know you've been doing these like crazy. We like to have a little fun with the guest. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you 5 questions, really quick, rapid fire. We'll let you think about it, and we're going to try to guess your answers, and then me and Steve's going to see who wins this game, who guesses the most right. Is that cool with you?
Yeah.